Today we are discussing a very important Supreme Court judgment related to cheque bounce cases under Section 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act, 1881. Many people believe that if they give a blank signed cheque to someone and that person later fills the amount, the cheque becomes invalid. But the Supreme Court of India clarified this legal position in a landmark judgment. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Legal Information, Law Insights. I am Advocate Mukund Mahajan. Let us understand this case in detail. 1. Case details. Bir Singh v. Mukesh Kumar was decided by the Supreme Court of India on 6 February 2019 by a bench comprising Justice R. Banumanthi and Justice Indira Banerjee. The judgment is reported in 2019 4 SCC 197, AIR 2019 SC 2446 and 2019 CRI LJ 3227. It is a reportable judgment, and therefore the legal principles laid down in this decision constitute a binding precedent for all courts in India. 2. Background of the case. The dispute arose from a financial transaction between two individuals. According to the complainant, Bir Singh, he had given a friendly loan to the accused Mukesh Kumar. To repay the loan, the accused issued a cheque drawn on his bank account. When the cheque was presented for payment, it was dishonoured due to insufficient funds. After the dishonour, 1. The complainant sent a legal notice as required under Section 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. 2. The accused failed to make payment within the statutory period. 3. Therefore, a criminal complaint under Section 138 NE Act was filed before the magistrate. 3. Proceedings before lower courts. Trial court. The judicial magistrate first class examined the evidence and held that the cheque was issued towards repayment of a debt. The legal requirements under Section 138 were satisfied. Therefore, the accused was convicted for the offence of cheque dishonour. Appellate Court. The Sessions Court also confirmed the conviction. High Court. The accused approached the Punjab and Haryana High Court. The High Court set aside the conviction by accepting the argument that the cheque was blank when it was signed and handed over. The complainant then approached the Supreme Court of India. 4. Key legal issues before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had to decide some very important legal questions. 1. Whether a blank signed cheque is legally valid. 2. Whether the holder of the cheque can fill the amount and other details later. 3. Whether the presumption under Section 139 of the Negotiable Instruments Act applies to blank cheques. 4. Who carries the burden of proof in cheque bounce cases. 5. Arguments of the parties. Arguments of the complainant. The complainant argued that the cheque was issued towards repayment of a legally enforceable debt. The accused had voluntarily signed and handed over the cheque. Under Section 139 of the Negotiable Instruments Act, the court must presume that the cheque was issued for discharge of a debt or liability. Therefore, the accused must prove that no such debt existed. Arguments of the accused. The accused argued that the cheque was blank when it was signed. The complainant later filled the amount and other details. Therefore, the cheque should not create criminal liability. 6. Legal provisions considered by the court. The Supreme Court examined several important provisions of the Negotiable Instruments Act, 1881, including Section 20 Inchoate Instruments, Section 118 Presumptions regarding negotiable instruments, Section 138 Dishonour of cheque, Section 139 Presumption in favour of holder. Under Section 139, the law presumes that the holder of the cheque received the cheque for the discharge of a legally enforceable debt or liability, unless the contrary is proved by the accused. The Supreme Court has clearly ruled that even if a person gives a blank signed cheque, the law will presume that it was issued for repayment of a debt. Under Section 139 of the Negotiable Instruments Act, the burden of proof shifts to the accused to prove that no debt existed. 7. Observations of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court made several important observations in this landmark case Bir Singh vs. Mukesh Kumar, 2019. The Supreme Court has clearly held that even if a check is given blank but signed, the person receiving it can fill the details later, and the check will still remain legally valid. One blank signed check is valid. The court held that if a person voluntarily signs and hands over a check, the check remains legally valid even if some details were not filled at the time of issuing the check. 2. Filling details later is permissible. The court clarified that the holder of the check may fill the amount and other particulars. The check does not become invalid merely because the drawer did not fill in the details personally. 3. Presumption under Section 139. Once a check is signed and issued, the court will presume that it was issued to discharge a legally enforceable debt or liability. 4. Burden of proof on the accused. The accused must rebut this presumption by producing credible evidence. A mere denial is not sufficient. 5. Trust and fiduciary relationship. The court also indicated that many times checks are issued between friends, relatives, or business partners on the basis of trust. In such cases, the argument that the check was blank or was given only as a security cannot be easily accepted. Therefore, even in such circumstances, the legal presumption of liability under Section 139 applies, unless the accused produces credible evidence to the contrary. Once the signature on a check is admitted, the law presumes that it was issued for a legally enforceable debt. The burden then shifts to the accused to prove that no such liability existed. 8. Final decision of the Supreme Court. After examining the law and facts, the Supreme Court held that a blank signed check is legally valid. The holder can fill the check details. The presumption under Section 139 applies even to blank checks. Therefore, the Supreme Court allowed the appeal and restored the conviction of the accused. 9. Key legal principles established. This judgment clarified several important principles. Signing and issuing a check creates legal responsibility. A blank check does not invalidate the instrument. The law presumes the existence of debt or liability. The accused must prove the absence of such liability. 10. Impact of the judgment. This judgment has had a major impact on check bounce litigation in India. It strengthened the credibility of checks as negotiable instruments and reduced the misuse of the defense that the check was blank. This judgment was delivered in 2019, and since then it has been consistently followed by courts across India. The legal principles laid down in this decision continue to guide trial courts, appellate courts, and high courts in check dishonour cases under Section 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. Even today, courts rely on this ruling while deciding cases involving blank checks, presumption of liability, and burden of proof under Section 139. Therefore, the course of action established by the Supreme Court in this judgment remains valid and is being applied by courts throughout the country till this date. 11. Practical lesson for the public. The important lesson from this judgment is: never issue blank signed checks, post-dated checks without trust, checks without sufficient funds, because dishonour of such checks can lead to criminal prosecution, fine up to double the check amount, imprisonment up to 2 years. Conclusion. The Supreme Court judgment in Bir Singh vs. Mukesh Kumar, 2019, remains one of the most important precedents in check bounce law in India. It clearly establishes that a signed check carries legal responsibility, even if it was originally blank. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and press the bell icon for more legal insights. You may also join this channel by clicking the join button below this video and support my efforts in spreading legal awareness among citizens. Jai Hind! Jai Bharat!